several boxes showing up here. Fancy, ow. Oh boy, sticker, yeah. Wine voucher, I don't get it, whatever. Little stupid one of these. Nobody likes those, but we gotta do it, allegedly. One of these guys here. Heat shielding, some more heat shielding. Vacuum line, this is gonna be used for trans vent reroute. Currently it's spraying a little bit at big power levels and at the drag strip and whatever, and it's kind of putting some spatter on the underside of the car, so we're gonna reroute this to a little mini K&N filter. More on that later. Another one of these guys. Turbine outlet, V-band. Really gross out today, all wet and rainy and cold. So I've been spending most of the day doing some editing and catching up on that. And then tomorrow and Friday, I can get going on starting this whole exhaust project. So, wow, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, till it's done, basically. I've always had good luck with heat shield product stuff. They were a partner on my race program way back in the day, so kind of stick with those that support me or supported me back in the day. Got a bunch of parts on hand, so now we can really dig into the Fairmont here. Got to go ahead and pull the wheel, fender liner, start yanking the downpipe, wastegate, all that stuff off, and then start building all new. Just kidding, actually gonna go ahead and put some heat shielding onto the fuel and transcooler lines first and just kind of get that done and out of the way, and then move on to pulling everything apart. Now that the heat shielding is all on, I can go on to the fun part of pulling everything apart up here, downpipe and exhaust wise. Simple V-band here, simple V-band up on the turbo. I'm a big fan of slip joints like this whenever applicable. These are just some Helix racing springs. They make all different lengths and sizes. A couple stainless washers bent up for your tabs, and off you go. We'll get this thing blasted apart and probably start working on the 4-inch main downpipe fit up. And then once that is roughly all tacked in there, then I can go ahead, mark, and blast in a hole for the 2.5 and work on that. Sounds easy, but it's gonna take a little while, so let's get into it. I remember this V-band is soup, like this is a gnarly one. I just need that thing held up so that it takes the pressure off of it. Yep. There we go. Oh, that's gross. We got our first 90 here done up for the downpipe. Mostly what I'm doing here is recreating this awesome piece that Peter made, probably to about here, and then basically put that cutout into here, hope it all fits, line it up, tack it, whatever, and then start building the 2.5 inch, and then this can get built afterwards. But I want to get that main 2.5 stuff done because this part here isn't as complex as running that 2.5 all the way through. So mocked up this 1 7/8, give or take, is about what I've measured off of that. Got this all cut out on this here portable bandsaw table mount jobby. That thing works pretty good, but you got to have a steady hand and make sure it's level and straight and all that stuff. So this piece, go ahead, tack these up, bolt this onto the turbo, and then go ahead and kind of fixture this, not fixture, but hold it, make a couple marks, bring it off, tack that, and then back in we go a couple times, cut another one, blah, 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 blah. All right, so I got a couple pieces tacked together and pressed onto the turbo and held in place. Got to go and size up some stuff, make sure it all fits, throw the fender liner in, make sure we got clearances and stuff like that, and then test fit a V-band and the cutout, make sure that all works, figure out if I'm gonna extend the cutout down or just kind of tack the V-band to here and then the cutout, whatever. Just some rough fitment stuff. So I'll switch over to time lapse and off we go. First bit of the main downpipe section is all done, back purged, welded up, whatever, yada yada. Gotta go ahead and install that in here. I've got these pliers here holding the V-band open because this like solid V-band is a real, it's rugged. It's hard getting the thing in there. So hopefully that helps get the downpipe in, and then I can start working on my 2.5 inch exit out of here somewhere underneath. So we're gonna get into that right now. All right, we're making good progress. Fender liner's in. Downpipe is in loose. Let me try and get an angle on this here. You can kind of, all right, hang on. All right, this is better. So you can see downpipe is in. You can see clearance is all there. It's pretty close on the frame rail, but not too bad. We can get the V-band on and off, which is good. I'm just trying to keep it away from melting the fender liner and just tucked over this way as much as possible to also give me clearance. Let me zoom out, there we go. To also give me clearance on the wastegate here, getting back over to the downpipe when that comes out. So the closer I can hug everything that way, the better. Got a big tube in here. Just finished up welding on the V-band flange and this 45, and then the rest of it is tacked together, so I'm trying not to move it around too much. Tacks are holding pretty good for now, but you can see we got pretty good clearance on most stuff. It do be fitting. Now I can come from right here with another little straight. I'm gonna have to get a longer heat shield sleeve or another 18-inch one to cover more of this because it's a little bit close here. It's not terrible, but I'd like to just be safe. But yeah, then I come out of here with a straight, a little 45, cat, and then start working my way back. I'm thinking I'm gonna come off of this threaded mount up here or somewhere. I'd like to get a support for this in here or off of this side over or something. I gotta put a hanger in here somewhere. Maybe off of here over to this pipe, and that'll support all that up. Also, the starter can come in and out with the whole exhaust in, and we don't have to mess with any of that, which is pretty big. It's nice being able to do that and not have to pull a bunch of stuff off. But even if we did have to pull the exhaust out, it'll be V-banded here, and there's the V-band up there, which you can do all with the fender liner in. Boop. We could pull all that out to do a starter or something if we had to. I figure it'd be worth showing how this comes in and out of here now that this is all tacked up and everything, and we got all that clearance. I haven't tried pulling it out the front. I put it in from the back. I don't think, it's a little warm still. I don't think it will come out the front with that V-band on it. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try because I know that it's pretty simple and straightforward. Go ahead, fish it out the back here. And you're not gonna touch any power wires, plenty of clearance, even if you had the battery all hooked up. Pretty simple. So most of this exhaust stuff, actually all the exhaust stuff is done except for the Cerakoting stuff. got to make sure Oliver likes it and everything is good to go and functional and it's fine on the road, so we don't have any modifications to make before we go get it all coated. Hopefully he's going to come check it out this weekend, but we'll see. That'll be later on, whatever. Anyway, that stuff's all done. I've got the majority of the wiring right here for the extra MAC valves. So our little valves here that are going to be run off of the CO2 pressure to control when that cutout in the downpipe opens and closes and yada, yada, yada. I didn't really film all of it because I was like, there's only so much cutting and fitting and filing and welding that you guys are probably going to want to watch, right? So I didn't film too much of that. I'm going to go ahead and put the car up and I'll give you an overview of basically how everything came out now that it's all in and assembled and pretty much done. So let's get into that. So we got just our standard 4-inch fender dump kind of deal here. Looks all pretty standard till you really start getting into it. Wastegate dumps, slip fit into here again. Exhaust springs, these are from Helix Racing. I don't know exactly what they're for in terms of like dirt bike exhaust or whatever, but they're exhaust springs. They make all different lengths and sizes and stuff. I like using these a lot for slip fits. Just a couple washers, tack welded on here, bent up, good to go, all stainless stuff. It's a little bit tight right here, but I wanted to leave the wastegate clocking exactly the same, so that way if we go back to the other exhaust, the other downpipe and exit, the tie-in for the wastegate and everything is all still the same. We don't have to worry about rotating this and getting it exactly right. It's all the same. So we come out of our downpipe with our 2.5 cutouts right here. I don't know if I can get an angle on it. Yeah, there you go. See the little diaphragm. We got our vacuum line that goes up to the MAC valve. Hopefully that all holds on there. There aren't really any barbs on that wastegate diaphragm type deal, so we'll see if it blows the hose off or not. Moving on, come out of our downpipe, 2.5, all the way around, dumps through here. Plenty of starter clearance to get the starter in and out still. Wiring's all good, subframe clearance is good. V-banded here, tied to that. We got our flex bellows in up there. Catalytic converter, little MagnaFlow jobby. You can see it hangs a whisker lower than the subframe supports and stuff, but there's still about 7 inches of ground clearance below this, so we're good to go on that. All the way down through. Little Borla resonator, little bracket, ties into this whole subframe connector mount here. Little Borla muffler. We got a V-banded end on it with just a little turn down. V-banded this in case we want to come over the top of the axle and make a whole exit over here. But for now, it's just a turn down, heat sleeved all the spots where it's close. Not so bad. Sitting in the fishbowl Fairmont here. As you can see, we ain't got no tint. Everyone can see us when we're riding around. Weird. Gonna go ahead and do a quick little overview of this whole installed cutout setup. We're using a CO2 operated cutout system on this instead of anything electrical. We've had some issues with the electric ones in the past where the motor isn't strong enough to stay shut or the motor doesn't like the heat that gets put through it long term. We're using a 4-inch cutout from Loud Valves. It is a normally closed valve, so it's always closed unless we supply pressure to the little wastegate on there. Just looks like an internal gate you would see on, 80s, 90s turbo, internally gated jobber. Little vacuum reference diaphragm. This one gets a little bit of boost pressure, extends the rod, opens the cutout, off we go. Sounds simple, but tying it into the CO2 system took me a little while to figure out. I'm sure there's some Holley experts out there that would be able to do that in like 15 minutes. Took me about an hour kind of thinking through it and figuring out exactly how to populate a table, what to have for the X and Y values to basically just pulse the solenoid, the MAC valve, right? Pulse the MAC valve just a little bit to open the cutout, and then again, when the switch goes off, to pulse it just a little bit to shut it off, but to not have those pulsing forever and not apply too much, because that little wastegate diaphragm doesn't really have a barbed nipple on it. It's just kind of a smooth extension with a couple lines cut in it. So I didn't want to apply a ton of pressure to this, but it takes about 3 to 4-ish PSI to open that one with the exhaust pressure and everything on there. So I got to supply some pressure, but not too much. Let's go open the hood quick and I'll show you the plumbing for the CO2 pressure to the MAC valves, out of the MAC valves, all that good stuff. Pretty straightforward here. CO2 feed line comes in, T right here. So we have our cutout MAC valves, and then we have our main wastegate MAC valves here. Both get bottle pressure. This little rubber hose goes down to the cutout wastegate diaphragm. This one is all push lock down to the actual wastegate dome. This line here, I have not blown it off either end yet in my testing, thankfully. I was able to, just dial in the pulse on the MAC valves to get that to open the cutout, and Not anymore. So essentially what's happening in the Holley is when I hit the cutout switch to enable the cutout or open it, your feed MAC valve pulses just enough to send pressure from the CO2 system down here, open the cutout, and then it stops pulsing, and then it just holds pressure. When we disable the switch, the vent MAC valve actuates and bleeds off the pressure from this line here. That way we don't end up losing a ton from the bottle over time, just this little bit that's in the feed line here, a couple PSI at a time, and yeah. As you can hear, we've got the hot rod running, just barely fired it up. Nice and quiet for what it is, right? It's not silenced, no Prius, but it'll at least keep the neighbors happy. There's more vibration harmonics in the car than there is actually exhaust noise, and that's just because the engine is solid mounted. The transmission is on a pretty stiff poly bushing. It's just the way it is. The rear end is solid linked, you know, it's street race car type stuff, so you're gonna have some vibration. So as you can hear, we've got a tiny little bit of bleed by in the cutout, but not a lot. I think you're gonna have that no matter what kind of cutout you run. I think the sliding guillotine style might be your most sealed possible, but for what we're going for and what this car is, this is a really great result that we're super happy with. We've got just the tiniest little bit of bleed by in that cutout, but the majority of everything is being forced through the full system. As you can tell, the fuel pump is a little bit louder than the exhaust is. So we're gonna hop in the car here, go ahead, open up our CO2 bottle, get our line pressurized. Now we're gonna go ahead and hit our cutout switch. You can't see it because of the steering wheel, but we're gonna hit the cutout and then you'll hear the whole pitch change as we're in the fender dump. There we go. Now we'll do our exact same walk around, but with the cutout open. So as you can see, quite a bit louder. Definitely drowns out the fuel pump a little bit until you get back to the driver's side corner. Then you can really pick that pump up again, but you can still hear this thing coming out of that fender dump. Now hop back in the car. We're gonna go ahead, close the cutout. There we go. Do a quick little buzz around the block with it. Nothing crazy. I'm not gonna get into boost with it. Customer's car. Turned up a little bit right now and it's only on pump fuel, so we kind of had it spiced up for the track with some E85 or E90, whatever the mixture came out to. So just gonna spin around the block, show you the cutout function. That's gonna be that. This is cutout closed, so we're through the 2.5-inch quiet exhaust system. So we got both windows, both front windows are open, 4 or 5 inches. Cruising down the road. Wrist on the wheel, we're not holding it, we're going 50 miles an hour, just cruising down the main road. Really not that bad. We're just under 2,000 RPMs right now. There's no crazy drone. It's a little bit right now when you're very, very partial throttle, hardly on it at all. But again, for what the car is, can't complain. It really does drive down the road nice, being solid linked in the rear and everything. It's like, yeah, you get some vibration from the driveline, things like that, but keep coming back to this. For a 1983 that makes as much power as it does and is built and everything like this, it really goes down the road awesome. So we're just cruising, 2100 RPM, we'll open the cutout.
street car, you know? The fuel pump is so loud.